I was pulling into my driveway after a long day at the shop when I saw them. 3 guys in polo shirts standing around my boat trailer, clipboards in hand, taking pictures. One of them was spray painting a big red X on the side of my base boat. Before you watch full story, comment down your country name. I would love to hear. Also subscribe the channel. My heart dropped into my stomach. That boat wasn't just transportation, it was my livelihood, my passion, and the only thing that kept me sane after my divorce. I'd spent 2 years rebuilding that 1987 Ranger from the ground up, every bolt and rivet a labor of love. Hey, what the hell are you doing? I shouted, jumping out of my truck. The guy with the spray paint looked up, not even bothering to look sorry. You Tommy Morrison? Yeah, that's me. And that's my boat you're vandalizing. He pulled out an official-looking document. This vessel has been declared a community safety hazard by the Sunset Harbor HOA. It's being impounded for violation of watercraft storage regulations. I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. What regulations? I own this property. That boat sits on my land. Not anymore, he said, gesturing to a tow truck that was backing up my driveway. HOA voted last week. All boats over 16 feet need to be stored at the approved marina facility. Yours doesn't qualify for the exemption. That's when I knew I was in for the fight of my life. Let me back up and explain how I got here. My name's Tommy Morrison and I've lived on Sunset Lake for 8 years. I bought my house specifically because it came with lake access, a private boat ramp, a small dock, and most importantly, waterfront property that let me launch my base boat whenever I wanted. The house isn't much to look at. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, need some work. But it sits on 2 acres of prime lakefront real estate, and when I bought it there was no HOA, no restrictions, just me and the water. I run a small fishing guide service called Morrison's Base Adventures. Nothing fancy, just me taking folks out on the lake who want to catch some fish and forget about their problems for a few hours. The boat is my office, my workshop, and my escape all rolled into one. For 6 years, everything was perfect. I'd wake up at dawn, load my gear, back the boat into the water, and spend the day doing what I love. The lake was quiet, the fishing was good, and the only neighbors I had were other folks who understood the peace that comes from being on the water. Then came the developers. 2 years ago, construction started on the north side of the lake. Sunset Harbor Estates, 37 luxury homes starting at $850,000 each. The kind of place where every house looks the same and every lawn is exactly the right shade of green. With the new subdivision came the Sunset Harbor HOA, and with the HOA came Sandra Mitchell. Sandra was a retired real estate agent from Atlanta who'd moved here with her investment banker husband. She had big plans for elevating the community standards and protecting property values. Which, as I soon learned, meant controlling every damn thing within a 5-mile radius of her new house. At first, I thought the HOA drama would stay in their little bubble. My property wasn't part of their subdivision, and I had no intention of joining their club. But Sandra had other ideas. It started small. A friendly letter introducing herself as the new HOA president, welcoming me to the enhanced Sunset Harbor community experience. She mentioned that they were developing new lake usage guidelines to ensure everyone could enjoy the water safely and responsibly. I threw the letter in the trash and forgot about it. Then came the second letter. This one was less friendly. The HOA was conducting a comprehensive review of all lake-adjacent properties to ensure compliance with new safety and environmental standards. They'd be sending representatives to inspect docks, boats, and shoreline areas. I called the number on the letter and got Sandra's voicemail. Left a message explaining that my property wasn't part of their HOA and they had no authority to inspect anything on my land. She called back the next day. Mr. Morrison, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The new regulations apply to the entire lake area, not just HOA properties. Says who? The county adopted our recommendations as part of the new lake safety ordinance. All waterfront property owners are required to comply. That was news to me. I called the county offices and spent an hour getting transferred between departments. Finally, a clerk in the planning office confirmed that yes, there was a new lake safety ordinance, but no, it didn't give the HOA any enforcement authority over private property. I called Sandra back and told her to stay off my land. Mr. Morrison, I understand you're resistant to change, but these regulations are for everyone's benefit. We're simply trying to maintain the quality and safety standards that protect all of our property values. Lady, my property values are just fine. Keep your standards to yourself. That's when the real harassment started. 2 weeks later, I got a citation in my mailbox. Not from the county, not from the state, from the Sunset Harbor HOA. I was being fined $500 for non-compliant watercraft storage. According to the citation, my boat was visible from the lake and didn't meet community aesthetic standards. I laughed out loud. Then I got mad. I drove straight to Sandra's house, which was easy to find because it was the biggest one in the subdivision with the most expensive cars in the driveway. She answered the door in tennis whites, looking like she was about to head to the country club. "Mr. Morrison. What a pleasant surprise." "Cut the crap, Sandra. You can't fine me for parking my boat on my own property." "I'm afraid you're mistaken. The lake safety ordinance clearly states dash. The ordinance doesn't give you enforcement authority." I checked. Her smile faltered just a bit. "Well, perhaps we should discuss this with our attorney." "Yeah, let's do that. But first, you're going to tear up that fake citation and stay off my property." "I'm afraid that's not possible. The citation stands, and if it's not resolved within 30 days, we'll be forced to escalate." "Escalate to what?" "Physical remediation." I stared at her. "Are you threatening to steal my boat?" "Not steal, Mr. Morrison. Relocate for compliance." That night, I called my old army buddy Jake, who'd become a lawyer after his service. Explained the whole situation, asked him what my options were. "Tommy, they're bluffing. An HOA can't enforce regulations on property that's not in their jurisdiction. But here's the thing, they can make your life miserable while you fight them in court." "How long would a court case take?" 6 months to 2 years, depending on how dirty they want to play." "And how much would it cost?" "More than you want to spend." Jake was right. I didn't have the money for a long legal battle, and Sandra knew it. She was counting on me backing down rather than fighting. But she didn't know me very well. The next morning, I found a survey crew on my property. 3 guys with equipment, measuring distances from my boat to the shoreline. I walked out in my bathrobe and slippers. "Morning, boys. You lost." The crew chief looked uncomfortable. "We're doing a compliance survey for the HOA. On my property? Without my permission." "Ma'am? I mean, the lady who hired us said it was community property." "Well, the lady who hired you lied. This is private property and you're trespassing." They packed up and left, but the damage was done. Sandra was escalating just like she'd promised. That afternoon, I got a call from the Department of Natural Resources. Someone had filed a complaint about unlicensed commercial fishing activities on the lake. My guide service license was being suspended pending investigation. I knew exactly who'd filed that complaint. The DNR investigator was a young guy named Collins who seemed genuinely confused about why he was there. "Mr. Morrison, I've got your guide license here and everything looks in order. Your insurance is current, your boat registration is valid, and I don't see any violations on your record. So why are we here?" "Well, the complainant alleged that you were operating without proper permits and violating lake usage restrictions." "What restrictions?" Collins looked through his paperwork. "Something about an HOA ordinance requiring all commercial fishing to be conducted through approved marina facilities." "Collins, I've been running trips out of my private dock for 6 years. There's no law that says I have to use a marina." "I know, sir. That's why I'm confused. The complaint doesn't really make sense legally." "Who filed it?" He checked his notes. "Sandra Mitchell, president of the Sunset Harbor HOA." Of course it was. Collins was decent about it. He spent an hour going through my paperwork, inspecting my boat and taking photos of my dock. Everything was legal and up to code. He told me the complaint was frivolous and that my license would remain active. But 3 days later, I got a letter from the DNR. My guide license was suspended anyway, pending further review. I called Collins back. He sounded embarrassed. "Mr. Morrison, I'm sorry. The decision came from higher up. Someone spoke to my supervisor." "Let me guess. Someone from the HOA?" "I can't really say, but yeah, probably." That's when I realized Sandra wasn't just playing games with fake citations and trespassing surveys. She had connections, influence, and the willingness to use both to destroy my business. But I wasn't done fighting yet. The next week, Sandra showed her hand completely. I came home from running errands to find a locksmith changing the padlock on my dock. Not fixing it, replacing it. With a new lock that I didn't have the key to. "Excuse me, what are you doing?" The locksmith looked up. "HOA hired me to secure this dock. Apparently there were safety violations. This is my dock. On my property." He stopped working and looked confused. "Ma'am told me it was community property." "Ma'am lied. Stop what you're doing and get off my land." The locksmith packed up and left, but the new lock stayed. Sandra had literally locked me out of my own dock. I cut the lock with bolt cutters and replaced it with my own. Then I called Jake again. Tommy, this is criminal trespass. File a police report. I called the sheriff's office. Deputy Rodriguez came out, took my statement, and examined the cut lock and the documentation I had proving ownership of the dock. Mr. Morrison, this is pretty clear-cut. Someone changed your lock without permission. That's destruction of property and probably trespassing. Can you arrest them? If you can prove who did it. The locksmith hadn't kept records of who hired him. He'd been paid in cash by some lady from the HOA. No names, no paper trail. But Sandra wasn't trying to hide anymore. 2 days later, she showed up at my house with a sheriff's deputy and a legal document. Mr. Morrison, I have a court order requiring you to remove your boat from the property within 24 hours. I looked at the paper. It was an emergency injunction signed by Judge Williams, claiming that my boat posed an immediate safety hazard to community welfare. This is bullshit. My boat hasn't moved in 2 weeks. Nevertheless, the court has ruled. 24 hours. The deputy looked uncomfortable but nodded. Sir, I have to inform you that if the boat isn't removed by tomorrow evening, we'll have to impound it. That night, I called Jake in a panic. Tommy, slow down. Read me the exact language of the injunction. I read it word for word. Jake was quiet for a long time. This is a temporary restraining order based on an emergency petition. Someone convinced a judge that your boat is an immediate danger to public safety. How is that possible? Someone lied to the judge. The good news is that TROs are temporary. You can challenge it in court. The bad news is that by the time you get a hearing, they'll have already taken your boat. So what do I do? Move the boat tonight. Get it off the property before they can impound it. I spent the next 3 hours loading my boat with everything valuable and driving it to a storage facility 20 miles away. It killed me to do it. I'd never stored my boat anywhere but my own property, but I wasn't going to let Sandra steal it with a fake court order. The next evening, Sandra showed up with the same deputy and a tow truck. She walked around my empty boat trailer like she was looking for something. Where's the boat, Mr. Morrison? Relocated for compliance just like you wanted. Her face flushed red. The court order required the boat to be removed to an approved facility. It was removed. You didn't specify where. She huddled with the deputy for a few minutes, then came back over. Mr. Morrison, you're in violation of the court order. The boat was supposed to be turned over to the HOA for proper disposal. I stared at her. Disposal? You were going to destroy my boat. The court order clearly states that the safety hazard is to be eliminated permanently. That's when I finally understood what Sandra was really trying to do. She wasn't just trying to control my property or shut down my business. She was trying to destroy my boat completely. The deputy looked as shocked as I felt. Ma'am, the order says removal, not destruction. Officer, I think you'll find that elimination of the hazard requires permanent disposal. The deputy read the court order again, more carefully this time. Ma'am, this says removal. Nothing about destruction. Sandra's lawyer face cracked a little. Well, we'll need to clarify that with the court. After they left, I sat on my porch and tried to figure out what the hell was happening. Sandra wasn't just some power-hungry HOA president. She was systematically destroying my life, my business, and my property with fake legal documents and corrupt connections. But why? What did she gain by running me off the lake? The answer came from the most unexpected source. My neighbor across the lake, an old-timer named Earl, called me that night. Tommy, you got a minute? I think you need to know something. Earl had lived on the lake for 30 years. He'd been watching the whole situation unfold and finally decided to speak up. That Mitchell woman, she's been buying up lakefront property for the past year. Quiet like, through shell companies and such. She's got her eye on your place. My place isn't for sale. That's the problem. Your property is the only one left on the South Shore that she doesn't control. If she can run you off, force you to sell, she'll own the entire southern shoreline. Why does she want it? Development. She's got plans for a luxury marina and boat club. High-end memberships, exclusive access, the whole 9 yards. Your little fishing guide business doesn't fit the image. Suddenly everything made sense. The harassment, the fake citations, the corrupted officials, the court orders, it was all designed to force me off my property so Sandra could complete her lakefront monopoly. But Earl wasn't done. Tommy, there's something else. I've been doing some digging into this HOA of theirs. Half the board members are investors in her marina project. They're not protecting property values, they're clearing the way for development. How do you know all this? My nephew works for the county planning department. He's seen the proposals, the investment documents, the whole scheme. Says it's the biggest development project the county's seen in decades. Earl was right. Sandra wasn't just an overzealous HOA president. She was a developer running a con game, using HOA authority and political connections to steal property for profit. But now I knew what she was really after. And I was going to stop her. The next morning I called Jake and told him everything Earl had shared. Tommy, if what you're saying is true, this is fraud on a massive scale. HOA board members have a fiduciary duty to act in the community's interest, not their own financial gain. What can we do about it? We're going to need evidence. Documentation of the conflicts of interest, the investment schemes, the corruption. And we're going to need help. Jake put me in touch with an investigative reporter named Sarah Chin who specialized in development fraud and political corruption. Sarah was interested immediately. Mr. Morrison, I've been tracking suspicious development patterns around the state. This Sunset Harbor situation fits the profile perfectly. Sarah spent the next week digging into Sandra's background, the HOA's finances, and the marina development project. What she found was even worse than I'd imagined. Sandra Mitchell wasn't just planning a marina. She was orchestrating a massive waterfront development that would include the marina, a luxury hotel, a golf course, and over 200 additional residential units. The total project value was estimated at $180 million. But the development required control of the entire southern shoreline of the lake. Sandra had quietly purchased 11 of the 12 lakefront properties through shell companies and straw buyers. My property was the only one left. Even worse, Sarah found evidence that Sandra had been using HOA funds to finance the property acquisitions. Money that homeowners paid in dues was being diverted to buy land for Sandra's private development project. Mr. Morrison, this is embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. We're not just talking about HOA abuse anymore. This is serious criminal activity. Sarah published her first article on a Friday morning. The headline read, HOA President's Secret Development Scheme, How One Woman Used Community Funds to Buy an Entire Lake. The story went viral immediately. Local TV stations picked it up, then regional news, then national outlets. By the weekend, reporters were camping outside Sandra's house and the story was trending on social media. But Sandra wasn't going quietly. Monday morning, I woke up to find my boat trailer on fire. Not an electrical fire, not an accident. Someone had poured gasoline on it and lit it up. The trailer was destroyed and the flames had spread to my garage, causing another $15,000 in damage. The fire marshal's investigation found clear evidence of arson. Accelerant patterns, multiple ignition points, and a timing device that suggested professional work. I knew Sandra was responsible, but proving it was another matter. Then I got lucky. The arsonist had used a cell phone to trigger the timing device. The phone's GPS data was recovered by the fire marshal's office, and it showed the device had been purchased at an electronics store in Atlanta, the same city Sandra had moved from. Better yet, the store had security footage of the purchase. The buyer was a man named Vincent Torres, who turned out to be Sandra's brother-in-law. Vincent was arrested 3 days later. Under questioning, he admitted that Sandra had hired him to send a message to the troublemaker who was interfering with her development project. That was all the evidence the district attorney needed. Sandra Mitchell was arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit arson, embezzlement of HOA funds, fraud, and racketeering. But the best part was still coming. With Sandra in custody, the HOA board collapsed completely. 3 board members resigned immediately to avoid criminal charges. The remaining members called an emergency meeting and voted to dissolve the HOA entirely. All of Sandra's fake citations, court orders, and development restrictions were invalidated. My guide license was fully restored. And the county launched a comprehensive investigation into all the property transfers Sandra had orchestrated. It turned out that most of the lakefront property sales had involved fraud, forgery, or coercion. The elderly couple Sandra had convinced to sell their family property for half its value? She'd lied to them about environmental contamination that didn't exist. The small business owner who'd sold his marina? Sandra had used fake citations and regulatory threats to force him out. One by one, the victims came forward. One by one, the property deals were unwound. Sarah Chin won a state journalism award for her investigation. Sandra Mitchell was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. And the Sunset Harbor development project was scrapped entirely. As for me, I got my dock back, my business back, and my peace of mind back. I also got something I hadn't expected, a settlement from the HOA's insurance company that covered all my damages and then some. I used the money to buy a new boat. Bigger than the old one, faster, and equipped with the latest fish finders and GPS equipment. I also bought the property next to mine when it went up for sale after Sandra's conviction. Now I have 4 acres of lakefront, 2 docks, and the most successful fishing guide service in the county. The lake is quiet again the way it should be. No HOA, no development pressure, no Sandra Mitchell. Sometimes I sit on my dock in the evening watching the sun set over the water, and think about how close I came to losing everything. Sandra had the money, the connections, and the corrupt system working in her favor. But she made one crucial mistake. She assumed that because I was just a fishing guide with a small business and limited resources, I wouldn't fight back. She was wrong. Fighting back isn't always about having more money or better lawyers or political connections. Sometimes it's about being too stubborn to quit, too angry to back down, and too principled to let bullies win. Sandra destroyed my boat trailer, corrupted government officials, and tried to steal my land. In the end, she destroyed herself. The lake is peaceful now. My business is thriving. And every time I launch my boat from my private dock, I remember that some things are worth fighting for, no matter how powerful your enemies think they are. Sandra thought she could use an HOA to steal a lake. Instead, she learned that when you come for someone's home, their livelihood, and their peace of mind, you better be prepared for war. And she wasn't.